today's World Insight. China's frontline agency in battling infectious diseases, the Chinese CDC, an exclusive inside look and up close with the agency chief, Dr. Gao Fu.
Roughly, we need around 70 to 80% coverage of the population.
And a mad scramble for COVID vaccines. Who gets what vaccine when, where, and how? Answers from the chief executive of the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation.
Our goal in COVAX is to deliver more than 2 billion doses of vaccine to countries that need it.
Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello, I'm Tian Wei, and this is World Insight. Since the earliest days of the pandemic, the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, otherwise known as China CDC, has put out all the stops in dealing with the invisible enemy. Chinese CDC scientists were the first in the world to identify the novel coronavirus. They shared its genome sequence with the world at the earliest time and later helped develop test kits and vaccines. I had the chance to have an exclusive visit to the China CDC site in person here in Beijing with Dr. Gao Fu, the head of the agency. He has become a familiar figure in China since the pandemic, sometimes even caught in controversy debates about the coronavirus. Dr. Gao introduced me to his colleagues who are working hard to study the coronavirus in a high-security lab where test results have a big impact on people's lives. I also sat down with him later to get the latest on the vaccines and what we can expect in the future.
This is a Clovis sequence workstation. We use the second and third generation sequence platform to finish the genomic sequence of the first isolate in the Beijing Xinfadi.
Okay.
Certainly, this is a very important part for the so-called molecular epidemiology, for the origin of the virus.
I see.
Once you do the sequencing, you will know the mutations. And those, because the coronavirus in general very stable, but only 1 or 2 mutations will tell you the origin of the virus. If it's an imported cases, imported virus, you will know where they are from.
I
so
see.
This sequence
so
is
this is the place.
Yeah.
What is the next?
So this is the PCR machine. We finished the first case diagnosis in China, and we developed the real-time PCR detection kit with this platform.
Mm-hmm. Next step.
This PCR diagnosis lab, including different rooms to test the sample.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of sample needs to be tested at the China CDC?
The first case of COVID-19 patient in different area.
I see. The first case needs to be tested here.
Yeah. We need to confirm say and to tell the government.
I see.
You know, this part, though looks like it's just freezers. Those freezers are very important. Because there you have a lot of anti-sera from the vaccinees, especially for the clinical trials, for their anti-sera. Those anti-sera will be used to test for the efficacy of the antibody titers. So you have a lot of anti-sera here, and the Dr. Tan's group and the whole coronavirus center will test whether or not the vaccinees have the provoked immune response for the antibodies. So this is very important. Those storage very, very important.
We can't see what's inside at this moment, right?
Well, it's just vials, very small vials with anti-sera.
I see. I see. Dr. Gao, good to see you.
你好. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you so much, sir. Just came back from Shijiazhuang long time ago, huh?
Just came back.
I'm
Okay,
so
thank you.
glad everything there is safe now.
Yeah, it looks like I think we are in the business.
The vaccines. how much availability is there for the Chinese public, the vaccines?
From our current prediction, I'm thinking about the R0 for this particular COVID-19. So roughly, we need around 70 to 80% coverage of the population. By the end of this year, definitely we will have enough. Hopefully, by push, we would have something enough before the next winter. So that will be a very challenging season, like what we are experiencing at the moment. So in general, I'm quite confident.
70 to 80%, is that a number already proved by science, by reality, or is it a number theoretically speaking?
Yeah, it's based on the characteristics of this particular epidemic, the virus itself. Because the R0, that is the basic effectivity rate. So in that case, the R0 is around 2 point something to 3 point something, you average. So this tells us you need 70 to 80%.
What are the availability of various kinds of vaccines here being used in China?
In China, at the moment, we have 3 vaccines are in use. One of them already is approved for commercial use. That's from Sinopharm, one of the companies. Sinopharm is a very big company. And the other 2 also either from Sinopharm, based in another city, and the other one, the O, is from Sinovac. So in general, we have 3 already the pipeline for the field work. As far as I know, we already had 27 million doses being used. That covers roughly about, you are talking about 20 million personnel being infected. Some of them, they are vaccinated twice, so you need twice injection.
What about the other vaccines? Vaccines, for example, by Pfizer and BioNTech, or AstraZeneca, or Moderna. How much availability will they be to the Chinese public? Would they have a choice?
Like our President Xi Jinping said, the vaccine is international public goods. So I think from the very beginning, Chinese products and also the international products under the WHO's coordination. So after COVAX, we are sharing. So the Chinese public also have a chance with this international collaboration to have some products, produced outside of China or developed outside of China. This is good because we don't know. This is the first time for the human being to use the coronavirus for the vaccine. We don't know which way would be the best. Of course, so far we know mRNA vaccine is good. We also, the adenovirus-based vaccine is good. We also know the inactive vaccine is good. And some vaccines in the phase 3 clinical trials for the recombinant protein vaccine also very good. So before we know which one is better, maybe they are very similar. So we got to develop in a different way, of course. Meanwhile, I also hope they are very kind of equal efficacy. So in that case, we will have enough vaccine for the whole world.
Earlier, there were media reports about China purchasing 100 million doses of Pfizer vaccine. Now, there are no further details in the earlier reports. I do not know whether that is true or not. And secondly, how much time are they likely to have in order to manufacture and deliver it to China? And how will the Chinese public also have the access to these different kinds of vaccines?
I believe, eventually you will have a choice. Think about the population in China. We have 1.4 billion people. Right. Once everybody's safe, and you can be safe.
But there's a lot of concern about the vaccine nationalism. The WHO Director General also have been talking about that recently. Therefore, many wonder, besides the Chinese vaccine, will China be able to have access to other vaccines, as many countries are jumping on these vaccines? And secondly, will others have access to the Chinese vaccines?
Some of the Chinese companies, the firms, they already signed some agreement with a lot of countries. I think the Chinese vaccines are also ready to share with everybody in the world. So, the thing is, all depends, who is in the risky population. As I said, stratified vaccination program is very, very important for this particular disease because first, we don't have enough vaccine. That's the fact. So you have to stratify who should go first. I hope the public should understand. For example, in China, we are targeting about 50 million people for the first vaccination. In this case, you need someone who is working so close to the imported goods, and also someone working in the customs, something like that, and also someone like me, working in the field. So that should be stratified the first line. So if you can only have those Medicare people vaccinated, if they are safe, they can be ready to go anywhere to the field to get disease done. And the second, because this is the emergency use, we still don't know whether or not there might be some side effect. I hope the public would understand. We still need some brave portion of the population to give a test. It's because it's the first time for the human being to use the coronavirus vaccine. We don't know. There are still a lot of scientific questions remains. Like for a year, can you imagine? We still have so many questions we cannot answer. If you use the common sense, if you use the knowledge, based on what we obtained even from HIV, flu, Ebola, this virus is particular. And the third, it's also very important, the access. When you are talking about the access, in some area, maybe it's very difficult to deliver your vaccine. For example, mRNA vaccine, you need -80, -40 degree, you need this to deliver your vaccine. Some areas it's very hard. So I can list some more. A lot of reasons here. I hope, the public should try to be relaxed, try to say, we are encountering such a special virus. It's really special. If we cannot suppress the virus will get a chance to mutate because the virus also wants to survive. As I said, several times, the relationship between the virus and the human is like Tom and Jerry story. The virus would, mutate, but I don't think anybody would think they mutate so quickly. Within a year, we already have so many variants. We are worried about the vaccine, but so far, looks like the current result shows the vaccine looks like they are still working, but we have to wait and see.
Theoretically speaking, do you have a time frame in which we need to wait whether vaccines are dealing with these variants are effective or not?
Here you have two things here. First, because we have several lines of vaccines, maybe some of them would cover, some maybe not working. Still a lot of unknown. And second, hypothetically, we can still put it in the lab. So this is why the scientists, the public health scientists, they are working so hard, virologists and immunologists, they are working so hard, try to dissect the mechanism of this mutation. Maybe we will get some clue.
Among all the variants, which, as a virologist yourself, is your biggest concern?
That is the virus isolated from South Africa, or first found in Brazil. We also have some data showing those viruses might already escape some of the therapeutic monoclonal antibodies under development. It's already there. We already see that there are already some publications. As I said, scientists, they are working so hard. Once you have this mutate, we already know something.
What about the data of China's vaccine transparency? There were some earlier media reports, particularly in the West, about the confusion of exactly what is the efficacy percentage of the Chinese vaccines. Now, I've been talking to experts in your field. They've been saying it is possible there are different numbers because of different methods and different categories being mentioned. But I really wondered, how do you see these apparent confusion of the data?
I mean, not just the data you see from China, the confusion data there. You can also see from other data. one day some numbers, the other day they want to, have another numbers. It's quite understandable. For example, in China, because in China we don't have any even outbreak. Very, very small. You are talking about less than 1,000 in particular areas. So we cannot do phase 3 clinical trial inside China. So what we did, we are doing always outside of China. There's a lot of coordination work there. From not just because of the different kinds of vaccines, because also the geographical, distribution from different countries. This is why the data could be delayed. The data from one country to the other could be so different. So you need a lot of analysis. In my opinion, with such a crazy virus, I think quite understandable.
When is China going to have a study of the amount of antibodies being developed among this population that have had inoculation?
I don't think it's a good idea to have the whole population for testing the antibody, but we will have some pilot, small-scale test to see the population and what's the percentage of the coverage. So in general, you are not expecting 100%.
No,
so
that's
the
impossible.
size. Yeah, that's the size. A good example is hepatitis B vaccine. You always have roughly 10% non-responder, 10% non-responders. We don't know what's the percentage for the COVID-19 vaccine we would have for the percentage. My gut feeling tells me there might be some.
I know you were one of the very early testers of the vaccine being developed.
Right, yeah.
By the way, a lot of compliment for that, being very brave and test before the public did. What about your level of antibodies? Have you ever tested?
Yeah,
Mr.
that's a very good question. I think, of course, I can only say it's very good. As a professional, when everybody is worried, we should be brave enough. When we are in a shortage of the vaccine, we should step back. That's our professional, I call it
Ethics.
Yeah, so we have to do that. So for my injection or my vaccination, I did a test. It's very good. That's just a particular one example. You cannot generalize. It's good for everybody. You are already a very good expert. We should try to do some, at least, pilot experiment. This is like a lot we are doing. We plan to cover some percentage of the vaccinees to see how high the antibody titer would be.
There seems to be a lot of wonderful, friendly competition among all these vaccine possibilities, which is healthy. On the other hand, some were suggesting there's also an apparent tendency that the developing countries are using more vaccines coming from China, while the developed economies seem to believe mainly the vaccines developed by the West, for example, the US and the UK. Dr. Gao, how do you see these kinds of analysis?
We are talking about openness. We are talking about transparency. So once you have this openness and transparency, you have to leave this for the public to choose. Give them options, whichever they like. I don't think that could be a problem, as long as we have enough. I mean, if more and more people want to get either developed or developed country from one particular country, I don't think you have enough vaccine to be delivered.
Dr. Gao, the type of vaccine that China has developed so far are different, for example, from those developed by Pfizer and BioNTech. In other words, it may not necessarily as flexible as that type by Pfizer in terms of new variants. How do you see the vulnerability of China? But on the other hand, how do you see the safety of this vaccine?
I don't think we are already in the state to compare which one is better.
We're not there yet.
Not yet, no. So from the very beginning, different companies and different countries, they developed a different kind of vaccine. All depend the technologies they have. Right. For example, in China, the inactive vaccines, we have the technology. And we are the first country isolated the virus. So we have the virus. So for the inactive vaccine, you need a live virus to grow the virus. Right. And we have the lab-based P3 or BSL-3 lab converted into the workshop. That's some kind of a prerequisite to have the inactive vaccine. We know we can do that in China, then we develop the inactive vaccine. Of course, mRNA vaccine, again, the adenovirus-based vaccine also in China, a recombinant protein vaccine in China. So the only thing is they are in a different stage of the development. So it all depends on technology. You mentioned Pfizer, Moderna, BioNTech, and AstraZeneca. For example, AstraZeneca, they have their technology from Oxford University. I know my colleague. They have their own technology there. So they initiate their first vaccine by doing the adenovirus-based. So again, we discussed, all depends on the technology you have. And also, more importantly, in my opinion, as a virologist, I would encourage to have different kind of lines because we don't know which one would be good.
Even with these variants, Chinese vaccines are not having a disadvantage because it is inactive vaccine, right?
You already heard maybe some news say mRNA vaccine, they can get the gene changed within 2 months.
That was what they said.
Yeah, exactly. I know people worried, you have an inactive vaccine, you might take some months. I'll give you an example. Inactive vaccine for the flu in China, 2009 pandemic, within 87 days, roughly 3 months, we have a new vaccine. Because the experience we already have, I think the inactive vaccine, if we have a mutated variants, again, we might also, with the inactive technology, we might also have it within 2 to 3 months.
Is China doing that? Once have the virus, the variant
Yeah,
virus?
exactly. Once you have the virus variants there, you have the virus strains, I don't think that could be a problem.